Recording in progress.
Hello, folks. We're going to be just wait a few more minutes to see who else will show up before we begin our special solid waste task force meeting.
We do have a sign-in sheet up front. If you want to come sign in, that would be fantastic.
Good afternoon, Ted and everyone. Hey, this is Monica with the Tallawadini Nation, and I'm not feeling really well today, so I'm just going to Zoom in, but I am here.
Thank you, Monica.
Okay, well, it looks like this is our assemblage. Call the meeting to order. Um, I am Craig Strong, Chair of the Solid Waste Task Force, and to the right, I have Kara Seymour and Marina, Chandra, and Stephen Gibbs, other task force members, and online we have Monica Heiner, a task force member. I'm going to introduce Aya Mahan and Drea Lancelot over here, who will be running most of the meeting today. And with that, I think I'll just let you take it away.
Thanks, Craig. My name is Aya Mahan. I'm the program director for the Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council, and we are working with the Del Norte Solid Waste Authority and the task force to host a series of 6 community meetings to understand our community's needs for food rescue, composting, and how we can reduce our waste to meet the goals of SB 1383. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out today. This is our 3rd meeting of the 6, and there may be a few extra meetings. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But the goal of these meetings is to have a comprehensive report that really guides the future for the next 10 years of our waste reduction in Del Norte County. Drea is here as well. And we have quite the agenda prepared today. There's lots of room for discussion. So we're really hoping to hear from everybody here, task force and community included. We're going to discuss a lot of topics on outreach, specifically community education for on-site management. We'll also discuss some opportunities for entrepreneurs and businesses. We'll do a community activity, and then we're going to come back together and discuss municipal and commercial scale options. And we'll finish the meeting by looking at some 10-year goals for ourselves. So I wanted to make sure we had some time to intro. I got microphones today, so you don't have to come up to the podium. I'll go ahead and start with our task force member. Actually, I'm going to start with Ted, and he can pass it on to the task force members.
Hi, welcome. My name is Ted Ward. I'm director of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. We're a joint powers authority of the city of Crescent City and the county of Del Norte. And we're honored to have one of our commissioners here in attendance, Mike Tompkins. And the task force there at the dais is an advisory body to the Solid Waste Authority Board. And today we'll be continuing the discussions about how we can change the way we're managing organic materials, yard waste, and food debris to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So here, Broom Slayer.
My name is Stephen Gibbs, and I'm retired, a member of Tallawahdoon Stewards, and I've been on this board for a while.
Chandra Ordway, I'm the Waste Zero Specialist at Recology Del Norte, and I too have been on the board for a while.
And I already introduced myself as Craig Strong, Chair of the task force.
And I'm Kira Seymour. I'm the Assistant Director for Del Norte Solid Waste Management and a member of this task force for quite some time. So I'm really glad to see you guys all here.
I'm Marina McNeil from the Family Resource Center Food Bank, and I've been on the task force for a short amount of time.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. I'm Andrea Lenkto, Executive Director of Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council. I'm just really honored to be able to hold these meetings and help do planning for our county.
Hi, I'm Javier Gomez. I'm the Agriculture Program Coordinator for Donato. Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Patricia Coble. I'm the Admin Assistant for Del Norte and Tribal Lands Food Council. I'm happy to be here supporting this.
I'm Riley Bennett. I am the Assistant Food Forest Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Rose Patchen. I am a vocational assistant too with the public health program.
Just IT.
Hi, I'm Joe Air Williams. I'm with Ocean Air Farms and Steering Committee of Donato.
I'm Julie Bjorkstrand, and I'm the Director of Nutrition Services for Del Norte Unified School District.
I'm Angela Gray. I'm the Community Education Coordinator for the Donato Community Food Council.
I'm Ben Zumeta. I have company Old Growth Edible Landscapes, permaculture design and consulting, and I was the site developer and designer for the food forest at Crescent City or College of the Redwoods.
Mike Tompkins. I'm the public member of the Solid Waste Board of Commissioners.
Hey, Matt Schwobel. I'm the environmental director for Elk Valley Rancheria.
Hi, I'm Kevin Milieu. I sit on the Elk Valley Rancheria Tribal Council Board, as well as the Community Food Council board member.
Hello, my name is Sunny Baker, and Del Norte County Public Health and Program Manager. I'm glad to be here.
Hello, I'm Roman Worthy. I'm the Food Sovereignty Program Coordinator for Tolowa Dani Nation.
And hello, I'm Robert Ford. I'm the Tribal Resource Specialist for Tolowa Dani Nation.
Thank you all. We're delighted to have you here.
And we have a few members on Zoom that will let introduce themselves as well.
Joel Wallen with the task force. I work for Amro WSG at the transfer station.
My name is Monica Heiner, and I'm with the Tolowa Dani Nation. I'm the Environmental Division Manager, and I've been a member of the task force for about a year.
Hi, I'm Mary Pitto, and I'm a consultant working for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Agency.
Great. I think that's everyone online. And I wanted to pass it back to Craig real quick to get approval of the board minutes.
Right. We have we passed up an agenda item is approval of minutes from our prior meeting. That would have been 11 of March 2025, our regular meeting. So we're looking for.
I believe you have two minutes, one from January, one from March. And so we're looking
January.
And these, I should thank the Donato Food Council folks for assembling these minutes. They're much more comprehensive than we usually have, and that's appropriate for these community meetings because all your input is really valuable. We want to make sure we capture all of that.
Thank you, Ted. Yes, so both the January and March meetings, minutes are in your packets. So looking for comments, corrections, and a motion to approve if we are so moved.
I make a motion to approve minutes from both January and March.
Do we
Second
have
that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
So with that, we can turn it back to Andrea.
Great. Thank you. Got to get that logistical stuff in there. So we are, as I mentioned, on our third meeting. We have shown you this flow chart and it keeps changing a little bit. It might change again, but we are working out this plan to get to a final report by by next April is the goal, to have that final report due, and having it done a little bit earlier to make sure we have plenty of time for community input as well. So today we're really focusing on education and outreach, as well as looking at different on-site management for both residential and business use, doing a lot of brainstorming, discussion, and also looking at some feasibility of municipal scale facilities as well. And then we're going to take a look, and we'll continue to take a look at defining our 10-year goals and really looking at different evaluation options, or evaluating different options based off of their feasibility. Something that we have discussed that is new to this planning process is separating food rescue and redistribution into separate meetings. It's a huge topic, and it's really important, and we want to make sure that we have all of the stakeholders in place, making sure that the grocery stores are on board, restaurants are all included. And so we will be breaking that piece off into an additional 2 meetings, I believe is the plan, to really dive deep and make sure that 1, our planning is in place, but 2, that all of the communication is happening amongst stakeholders for what's in action right now as well. So that is a little bit of a change, but I think that it will just increase the practicality of these reports. And instead of rushing over food rescue and redistribution, which is a huge piece, we'll get to take our time to look at it closer. So for today, we really wanted to do a quick recap of where we're at so far. Our last meeting was at the beginning of April. So really just like making sure that we remember everything we've covered up to this date. Our first meeting was in January as well. So we'll review. And then we really want to gather input on different education and outreach. That was identified as a huge priority in our community. And so really turning that back to you here today to come up with some outreach strategies. And we have an activity for that. We'll also explore community and business scale on-site management, and then get into some of these municipal scale options as well. And as I mentioned, we'll briefly look at our 10-year goals at the end of the meeting. So with that, I brought up this slide from Why Are We Meeting? And this came from our first meeting, but really it's to improve our community health and resiliency. I have this graphic. I don't know if you can see it because the camera is recording in the corner, but really we're here to look at organic waste management and composting, not only for the composting, but that it's going to create healthy soils, mitigate climate change, and also provide environmental justice for our community. So yeah, these are important reasons why we're here. We want to minimize our food waste. We want to recover and redistribute edible food waste, process our organic materials responsibly, and make sure that we're reusing and building systems for sustainability for our community. These are some of the target materials that Ted mentioned for management. We have brush, grass, a lot of green waste here in Del Norte County. Also food, edible food, and then food for animals, and then other organic byproducts, meat products, paper products, textiles, and fire control debris as well. And then here are some potential programs that could be, we've done some prioritizing, and we'll look at that as well. But I wanted to come back to this original list of all of the different potential programs that are possible. This is a new graph that Drea and I wanted to include, and it is based off of statewide averages, but it applies them to Del Norte County. And just looking at what are our top waste streams, you can see food is up there. Uncorrugated cardboard is a huge one. Paper products, even textiles. And this is for commercial. And then we also have residential. Again, food is a high one, paper, cardboard, just to give some perspectives on where we're at. And again, these are estimates, not direct for Del Norte, but based off of statewide and then applied to our local housing and population information. Here is the results. If you all recall, at our last meeting, we had a voting activity where you got to vote with little stickies on 2 to 3 top priorities. And we wanted to make sure that we are listening to you and sharing this information back. And we'll be diving into a lot of this today. It shaped the agenda of our meeting today. So for food waste and reduction, clearly the top vote was education and awareness. But also votes for business incentives and policy and infrastructure supports. When it comes to food waste recovery and redistribution, to strengthen those food rescue programs, which is why, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be breaking that piece into some separate work to really dive deep and strengthen those programs. Composting and infrastructure, 16 votes, both for community composting and funding and grants to support that. And then when it comes to our single-use product alternatives, having reusable and compost packaging available was one of the top votes as well, with 11 votes. So the goal of these meetings is really to listen and hear what the community wants and to create a plan that's going to shape the direction of these meetings, and then where we want to go with our food waste and our organic waste. So I did briefly make these slides. Let me see where we're at in time. I have a few more minutes, so I'm going to briefly slide over these slides. We can share this presentation afterwards if you want to look a little bit closer, but when it came to food waste prevention and reduction, some of the themes that we've identified is the challenge of school and daycare meals with rigid regulation, unfamiliar foods, specific milk requirements, but building awareness to highlight how school meals are a reliable source of healthy, nourishing food to make sure that food is getting eaten and not wasted. We've seen some key need for culturally relevant food education with consistent outreach. And making sure that our food is, that we're have outreach about what food, where our food is coming from, and then making sure the community knows the good news and the good work that's happening. Food waste rescue and redistribution. We mentioned making sure that food is recovered and becoming food if it can, and with this food recovery hierarchy. And backyard and community composting, keys to success. We want to make sure we have those compost leaders. We have covered bins, repetitive and place-based education, and a lot of outreach has been identified as a need. Windrow composting and pre-processing. We've identified that we'll need grinders, screeners, turners, concrete pads, and roof. Some concerns were stormwater runoff, regulatory constraints, and we have in-vessel and anaerobic digestion that we mentioned, and there's options here for both business and municipal partnership. And then today, what we did want to focus on was our community education and outreach for on-site management. So with that, I wanted to go over some of these potential outreach programs. And I'm going to start it off with this short video from Cal Recycle about community composting. And let me see if I can select the link in the corner there, community composting Cal Recycle link. Perfect. And then there's a video. And I thought that this would be just a great way to start the discussion. It's short. Okay. If the audio doesn't work, that's okay. I can share this. Do you guys want me to read it? Essentially, I wanted to share this video just because it goes through a successful community in San Diego that has created some really amazing community garden spaces based off of composting and providing the community a place to drop off their composting.
117 new neighborhood composting sites.
Okay,
Planted
let's
nearly
go and listen
500
to it real
trees
quick.
to provide
It's
shade and grow
That's okay.
food in underserved communities. Neighborhood by neighborhood, Californians are fighting climate change by recycling their food scraps at community gardens and small-scale composting sites like this one in San Diego.
This was all onion peels and citrus peels and eggshells.
What would otherwise go into a landfill, we're able to turn it into beautiful soil that helps regenerate our lands and helps grow food for the community.
With $1.5 million in support from Cal Recycle's Community Composting for Green Spaces grant program, previous recipients added 117 new neighborhood composting sites, planted nearly 500 trees to provide shade and grow food in underserved communities, and kept 5,500 tons of food and yard waste from creating methane in landfills, cutting climate pollution equal to taking nearly 600 cars off the road.
So we're also actually healing our environment.
Many more sites are expected in the coming years, with $4.7 million in additional funding for neighborhood composters.
I want to do the best as I can to take those nutrients and put them back into the soil here.
The benefits don't stop there.
We can replenish the soil and we can build community around it, just like you see in this garden.
When an individual is able to see their banana peel turn back into good quality compost that nourishes our soil, they see for themselves how it completes the cycle.
Are we feeling really hopeful?
As the next round of community composting grants roll out to more communities and tribes, California is building new infrastructure and modeling new pathways for the state's waste-free future.
Anybody can compost, everybody should compost.
It is easy, it is impactful, and it is a way that you as an individual can feel connected to being part of the solution.
Lowe's and Home Depot both can't.
Can't have composting without Lowe's and Home Depot. So I wanted to just share that video. I thought it was inspiring. There's a lot of good work we can do by simply taking our food out of the waste system and coming together with our community to find innovative ways to create composting. And that is a big piece. We also don't want to forget about food waste prevention and reduction as well. So I did a little research. Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority has a little bit of outreach on their website about reducing and rethinking. There's a ton of resources online about how to start backyard composting, from small private companies to other bigger organizations. This Neighborhood Soil Builders really caught my eye, closing the loop through composting with different guides. And so our activity today is to kind of come up with what kind of outreach would work well in our community for all of these different programs, whether it's prevention of food waste, maybe in the schools, to how would we get community to drop their compost off if we started a community composting system? And so we've designed an activity. And I did want to bring this up first before we get into the activity, which is feasibility. And I don't know, Drea, if you want to discuss a little bit of the feasibility. We created this chart to kind of evaluate different ideas long term as we start discussing what is the framework to carrying these out to see if they are viable for our community.
Yeah, so I think as a community and a group in whole, we have a lot of great ideas. I know at the Food Council and our steering committee meetings, we're always brainstorming all these ideas. So I don't think there's going to be a lack of ideas today, but our job, the Food Council, as the facilitators of this process, we're going to have to take what we hear from these meetings and figure out how to move forward. So I just wanted to share with folks that as we're capturing these ideas through this process, we're going to try to take them through this sort of feasibility test of who are they targeting, how feasible is it in estimated cost, time frame? Do we have the people that are trained or the expertise to deliver it? Can we scale it? Is it accessible by all our communities? Is there community interest and support? And then we'll give it sort of a rate of its feasibility, high, medium, low, and an impact of high, medium, low. So that won't happen today. We want you to brainstorm, and we're going to have a group discussion with questions, and then we're going to break into small groups. So you'll just get to brainstorm, but just know that then it will go through sort of a feasibility test.
Great. Thanks, Drea. So yeah, we'll start with some of these more guiding questions for a larger group discussion. And they are, what education or outreach would help you or your neighbors reduce food and organic waste? Would you use on-site composting or digestion systems at home or your business if supported? And what incentives, either discounts, grants, training, recognition, would motivate you? And then what systems seem most realistic for Del Norte's neighborhoods and businesses? And we are going to open this up for a discussion. You're welcome to come up, or if you want to put your hand up, I can bring the mic over. Or task force, I think you can just buzz in.
Thank you for that suggestion. We do have people can subscribe for an additional charge for yard debris collection, and that material is brought to the transportation. So it's a service that's available, but not supported and subsidized. Food waste, until we have a place that can actually process that material, collecting the material separate doesn't really have any benefit. So it's really critical.
Yeah, and we're thinking outreach. How all of us in this room care about composting, right? We all showed up to a meeting on a beautiful sunny day, but how are we going to reach our community members that may not have ever composted before, or maybe they need some basic education to understand how to compost? So there's no wrong ideas. These are all good ideas to just brainstorm. What is some of the outreach that's needed?
There we go. All right. I was thinking that we could do a series of different types of outreach because we have a lot of different people in our community in the way that they ingest information. So some of the outreach could be one-on-one, talking to your neighbors, seeing how they do their food waste, and seeing if maybe you can interject an idea or two. And then as an organization, we could host workshops and do educational activities around compost, maybe even at events or at the farmers market. Make it fun.
One-to-one outreach and train the trainers.
Youth soccer season is coming up, and just any of the local youth sports. I'm picturing like orange peels. I know that I don't know, it's not always just orange slices anymore, so it might not be as applicable. But if on those sporting events there was a collection of all the snackies, leftovers, peels, or whatever is accepted, and then having a little outreach education on site throughout the season or once a season.
I think emphasizing how helping people understand the self-interest of what they're doing, and with like the value of the compost that you can create. Also, I think the other side of the food waste issue is all can be we can fold it into fire management by basically a lot of the woody debris that we would need to that we would benefit from removing or thinning from our forests. I mean, not talking about cutting down big old trees, but like woody debris and waste, wood waste and leaves and all these other carbon-rich materials, which seem to be the underestimated component of any composting program, can help. I mean, a smart management strategy would be like protecting your home and community from fire, which I think we are underestimating the risk of the coastal area.
Ooh, I really like that idea. Advocating the use of mulch as a fire control approach. Yeah.
In public health, we have CalFresh Healthy Living Program, which is the education, focus targeting food insecure population in our community. Throughout the years, last decades, we've seen some great successes. The workshop series like Seed to Supper, working with master gardeners and also garden coalition approach, and really kind of like creating those, it's a task force champions, whatever you call it, like people who has skills and, passions and expert in this field, and to tap into community volunteers, like we call champion. But I think all these workshops and education and outreach behind those who believe, and has passion to change. So any changes you'd like to see in our community, we need some sort of activators and also trusted messengers. So cultivate that, I think, is that champions and leaders and activators through, I like the idea about Angela's train the trainer model is always great. And also activating some sort of coalition is again, community-driven movements. Creating a movement, I think I'd like to see, instead of targeted education, I think what sort of movements generated in our affecting most of our community through marketing strategy as well too. So one-on-one is great, but yet we want to kind of like affecting in our community with this ideas. So changing that, the social cultural norm through media marketing is also very great, effective idea too. And also, I like to suggest that some scalable, effective workshop series that we have offered throughout the decades, maybe revisit to scaling up through with this support, with the grants and education. What was this scaling up look like? I'd like to kind of explore that opportunity as well too.
So networking with community gardening groups and other affiliate organizations. Andrea Lang.
When I went to now Cal Poly Humboldt and living in Humboldt in general, there's some different programs. So on the campus, there was like a no waste group, and for every event, like they showed up and they managed the compost and the waste and the education. And down in Arcata, there's a group doing that now that's showing up at the farmers market, and they're supplying all the reusable tableware and utensils and doing the composting. So kind of in line with what Sunny was saying, I kind of feel like we do need a coalition, but we also need someone to sort of like own it and lead it a little bit, to kind of be that organization that's doing the full education and developing those programs. I feel like the Food Council can support and can help, but I don't think we can lead it.
I like the idea of our knowledgeable community members leading and showing us how, and even a committee. But for those that can't attend something live, YouTube videos, like intense learning and maybe webinars would be a great tool.
Okay, other ideas? Just digging down a little here. So thinking about composting and the folks you know who aren't currently composting but maybe have space in their yards. So I'm kind of curious what people think might take such a person from not composting to composting. What would it take? What could we do? How could we convince such a person?
Well, I don't know how I would convince those people, but I know that one of the problems my neighbor has is the rats and critters getting into her compost and the bears and just tearing it up.
Okay. So we cover some of that in the outreach and bears, good luck.
I did want to bring up, I was at the high school this last week teaching a workshop on how to sell to the farmer's market. And in the evaluation, there was a question of what these high school kids would like to learn more about in future workshops. And about 50% checked the box for learning about soil and composting. So I think making sure that we have outreach specific for our youth, because they're really the ones that are going to be leading the way in this, I think. And they're the ones that will get their parents to change. So making sure that we're including our youth in the outreach seems very important.
So a focused emphasis on reaching youth during school years. Greg?
Yeah, great suggestions. And listening to them, I think about the people that are not currently composting and that don't have the ability to, such as in trailer courts and apartments and things. And perhaps I really like the idea of personal contact, but there's a lot of individuals. But so my suggestion is to go to the owners, managers of those trailer courts, apartment complexes, and so forth, and not only present the opportunity of what's coming down the line, but also that this is a state law that we're trying to comply with as a rural county, and that this is coming, so that a level of activation for those people that things are going to change and we're all going to have to be composting more. Let's see, there was one other. Oh, yes. And great idea about youth sports events to have a bin there, a natural for all of the events in our community, to have education or even a compost bin there. And of course, the first one, obvious one to start with is a farmer's market. I don't know if that's happening, but that's a no-brainer. Yes, there should be a compost bin there and signage as to how to do that right. Thank you.
I live in a just apartment complex, so I think access is a barriers. Access and also knowledge can be also value, and value and knowledge and access, there can be some barriers to composting, and also individual level of composting, facility level, community level, all different levels of, maybe just piloting some, in different, it's just communities and the facilities and individual levels, and even including multi-units and apartment complexes as well too. I think that strategy would be different, but one thing I would like to know, baseline data, if you have one, or even how we're going to collect to know, what are the biggest barrier in community experience, and we can perhaps develop some pilot strategy addressing the composting.
I think for many people there's just physical limitations and this concept that you have to be able to move heavy stuff to compost. There's some ways that you can make that a lot easier by having, say, a worm bin that's already pretty easy to manage. But also, I think thinking about how any natural resource can be a pollutant if it's not utilized. We could think of youth without a purpose and with a lot of energy, and sometimes that turns to anger if they don't have a sense of purpose. So connecting, I mean, maybe on an idealistic sense, like kids and grandkids to helping their parents and grandparents compost, but also, I mean, on a larger sense, whether it's scout troops or other youth groups that would be basically seen as the face, could be the face of such a program, where they're the ones doing a lot of the labor and learning how to do the composting themselves. Well, then I guess that might be a motivating factor, I can imagine, for a lot of people who might not otherwise see the value to themselves because they don't have a garden.
I understand we have a raised hand from Marina online.
Hi there. Thanks for noticing. I was just looking at the incentives, discounts, grants, training, recognition, motivate use. And really, I just kind of thought of the Small Business Development Center that I know is potentially more of a Curry County thing because I'm in Brookings. But I don't know if there's anything similar in Crescent City, or whether those services can outreach if there isn't. But that's a lot of free help for just organizational stuff and grants, and just a lot of small business type things. I don't know what businesses are involved with all of this, but it might be a good resource to just get some help with certain types of things.
We could certainly reach out to the chamber as we're doing outreach to businesses as a starting point and see what resources there might be available here. Good idea.
That'll
Thank
work.
I really liked what you said, Ben, about being motivated by seeing something that's larger than yourself. And this is one of those things with carbon sequestration, with making soil more fire retardant, and being able to make all of our communities more self-sufficient, is something that in this day and age, it's quite overwhelming. Lots of bad news. This is something people can do, and it's grounding. So that's, I think, I mean, literally it's grounding, but obviously it's something that could be beneficial, not just in those systems, but also our social systems. So,
And I'll just say, as director of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, and thinking about how we might be able to approach these, we have had backyard composting workshops available. And, in general, they're limited by how well we're able to do outreach and how well we're able to reach people who might be interested. But in general, just a small handful of people attend every few months at best. And so as I'm thinking about that, though, there might be opportunities here for the authority to, say, establish outreach contracts, or to establish contracts for outreach kiosks and additional information at some of the good community gardens that we have. Also, there might be a possibility of contracting for a group to do some of the outreach that we're talking about, because in general, a lot of these activities are beyond the capacities of our small staff, but that doesn't mean that they're not great ideas worth of support. But just as we're talking about these things, just keep in mind, all these ideas are great. We won't be able to do them all, but we'd love to hear them. And now is the time to throw the mud at the wall. So more ideas.
Yeah, and we are going to break into small groups in just a moment where we can discuss more outreach opportunities for specific programs. And to keep us on schedule, I am going to move us to talk about the opportunity for entrepreneurs. Because right now there is, as we are developing this 10-year plan, I'm not getting feedback right from that. Okay. As we're developing this 10-year plan, there's an opportunity for businesses or entrepreneurs to utilize some of this waste to create a marketable end product. And so I know that Ted and Drea have a great story to tell about Pacific Northwest Organics, and that is a local business that started here in Crescent City And I don't know, Ted, do you feel like sharing the
Yeah,
story?
I'll start, and Andrea can fill in the gaps that I miss. So years ago, all solid waste in Del Norte County went to the Crescent City landfill. That included fish waste from the harbor, crab and shrimp shells, and that was, without a doubt, the number one complaint that we got associated with the landfill operations was the smell of those crab and shrimp shells as they decayed, wafting across the neighborhood. And so Eco-Nutrients, an affiliate of the Hambro family of companies, started looking at ways that they might be able to utilize those materials. And essentially they processed them into several different marketable end products, including chitin and compost materials. So essentially what was once a waste material causing a community problem became a feedstock for a product shipped out of Del Norte County. And then Pacific Organics split off as a separate company from Hambro, and I believe they're continuing, but essentially just the idea of looking at what material can be obtained for a very low cost because it's a waste material to one industry and then used as a feedstock to create a good business. Since that time, things have changed and they're no longer affiliated with the Hambro company, so it's more of an arm's distance. So I'm not as aware of their current activities, and perhaps Drea is.
Just that this local business is utilizing local fish waste and kelp to make high nutrient garden fertilizers, and they're really beneficial. They are shipped like nationwide and definitely regionally. And I feel like they're a really good example of a successful business from this area utilizing the waste feedstocks.
So the one other thing I have mentioned as we're talking about this is essentially now we're building the long-term plan. And just because we talked about some of the ideas about people doing outreach at sporting events, and that's great. But if you don't have the volunteer bodies, you don't have that program. So in the same way, now is an opportunity for any entrepreneur that's looking to take some segment of the organic materials that are currently waste and make them into some sort of feedstock. We want to help that process, but it's time for everybody to step up their game. And essentially, if you're an entrepreneur that maybe is interested in, say, producing mushrooms out of coffee grounds, maybe you're interested in producing a very high quality compost and marketing that compost as a product, you might want a piece of our waste stream. We might be able to work something out at this point so that you have a more reliable feedstock for that venture. But as time goes on, we're going to develop something to manage those materials. So if you're not there in the conversation right now, that conversation might not be available to you later. So now is the time. If you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea, great. But I'm saying all of this just because I love mushrooms, and just because there's lots of coffee grounds available here is not enough to create that business. We need to have somebody else who wants to do that and is ready to do that. So until we have that person, that business is not part of the conversation. But now is the time to have that conversation. So if any of you have an idea, have an interest, have a focus, we want to have that be part of our plan. So there's one other story, and so we did Eco-Nutrients and Pacific Organics. Similarly, we did a community planning process years ago, and we looked at the potential for developing a resource recovery park. And at that point, Hambro WSG, who's operating the transfer station, decided to open what they called the Eco Store, essentially materials salvaged from the transfer station and available for resale. So again, as we go through these community planning processes, there are opportunities for those folks who want to poise themselves to seize those. But there's a limited window of time. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Great. Thanks, Ted. We also have this other example here that was mentioned, I believe, in our first meeting about full cycle compost down in Arcata, where they charge for compost pickup and drop off, and they do it, I believe, exclusively from their bicycles. So I do have a few more questions for you all. Can you think of a business or enterprise that could come from organic waste here in Del Norte that would be successful? And do we have any entrepreneurs in the room? You don't have to give us all of your ideas, but if you have a business, yeah, like Ted said, now is the time to step up and start planning with us. And then further, what support is it that you need? Because I think that there is space to build support as well for our entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs.
Okay.
All right. I'm Haley. I am just throwing this out there. I do not want to be directly involved with it, even though I love my idea. I do not want to spearhead it. That you guys could start a worm farm. I know there's plenty of fishermen in the area, and you could do, you know, the long, big, slimy ones, like the night crawlers, all the way down to the little red wigglers. And then you could sell back those red wigglers, you know, to your composting workshops. So that way you get more community involvement with, you know, your larger scale composting. But then you can also offer it to recreational enthusiasts. Just an idea.
I believe Rumiano did quite a bit of research with respect to vermicomposting, so we have some background info there.
I think a idea that would maybe partner or be a part of such a program would be would incorporate fire mitigation projects on people's properties. There's money through the Fire Safe Council, at least there was until recently, to help facilitate such work being done. And so integrating those two arms, the carbon and the nitrogen sources, as well as, you know, the multiple other benefits, seems like a no-brainer to me. I could see myself as helping set up and design such a program. I would be happy to then ideally train somebody to manage it long term.
That's an idea that might have some legs, because at rural community, one of the areas that is very interesting is that we have a lot of Forest Service land, and a lot of that fire control debris has typically not been part of the municipal waste stream. But you're quite correct in that the Resource Conservation District and the Fire Safe Council are very interested in how do we look at managing those materials. They don't have the same drive to try to reduce greenhouse gases as our agency does, but that doesn't mean that there isn't great opportunity for working together. Okay.
The incentive to do so. So like and that is something I've heard Aaron Babcock trying to get buy-in from people to take part in thinning projects that actually could have almost no cost to the property owner. But it seems like a window where people could protect their properties as well as help build soil and be part of a carbon solution. And then it's also an issue I've been informed about is like the emissions on prescribed burns can be prohibitive within California laws and regulations for the Fire Safe Council. So anyway, if we're diverting it to compost instead, or biochar, which is much less smoke than a broadcast burn.
Becky Crockett of the Resource Conservation District did approach. We chatted yesterday, and I invited her to this meeting, so we're hoping to continue those conversations.
All right. Well, we can talk about more ideas as well in our small breakout groups, which we are going to break into small groups. Looking at the space, I feel like we could do. Does the task force want to join the other groups? Okay. So maybe we do 1, 2, 3, 4 different groups. We could even do 5 if you guys, maybe somebody comes over, but we'll break into small groups. We have these handouts here. Underneath the handout is a list of all of our, is from last meeting, of our sources, end uses, and processes if you need that for a reference. But really the goal is to go through and come up with some different outreach and training programs and fill them in and brainstorm. And then we have about 15 minutes for this activity. So we'll come back together and each group can share their one best idea that they come up with as a group. So we can all learn from each other. And then please make sure that these get turned back in so we have it for reference as we continue planning.
And if you run out of room in the teeny squares, feel free to flip it over and write on the back.
Yes.
But I collated them.
I have to facilitate the online group.
We're going to take about 3 more minutes to wrap it up. it's hard to break up all of this discussion, but we are going to try to migrate back together as a full group.
It wouldn't work if I worked at a big.
Oh. All right. So I'd like to hear back maybe one topic that you guys discussed from each group. We're running a little bit behind, but what I realize is that there's so much value in these small breakout groups and just having the free flowing discussion. And so in future meetings, really building in more time for this exactly what we just did. I think there's a lot of good that can come of it. So do we have a volunteer from one of our first groups? Kevin, can I volunteer you from our group? Testing?
Yeah. So we focused on food waste reduction, specifically on focusing on salad bars. And I'm sure we wouldn't limit it just to salad bars, and we'd probably expand into reducing, implementing some kind of programs to reduce that, but then also incorporating other waste associated with that. Casinos, other restaurants, and looking at, I'm sorry, I'm reading somebody else's notes here. Thank you, Aya. Let's see.
Want me to read them?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I need glasses. Sorry.
I'll explain, and then if you have anything to add. So we were looking at reduction in restaurants specific to the casino. We focused on the salad bar, thinking that, if we could come up with a system to outreach on how to reduce waste from salad bars, that could be used at all of the casinos, all of the salad bars. So creating a system. We talked about the likelihood of participation being high, especially if some of your reduction included employees getting to take food home that may be thrown away, that there's a huge incentive there to be able to feed yourself and your family, which would make the likelihood of implementation higher. We discussed the need for training to make sure that there's clear training and any regulation with the salad bar and food. The lead organization would be maybe, we were talking with Elk Valley, so they could be the potential lead organization. The support might be your restaurant managers. And then some metrics of success, maybe the weight of compost or the weight change of trash, but figuring out a way to quantify the progress. Anything else? All right. Next group.
So we talked about a lot of stuff on this page, and then Drea helped us get more dialed. So we went all the way through the drop-off community composting outreach line. And what we decided the topic of that would be a workshop or a campaign called Garbage to Gold. Thank you, Ben. And one of the things that we thought we could do when we're outreaching is that we tailor the outreach to the barriers that people have. So maybe learning more about the barriers that are preventing people from composting and then addressing the outreach to reach those barriers. But this little company of drop-off community composting and outreach could be entrepreneur-led, and maybe the GH Outreach would be interested in spearheading something like this. They already have a collection for cardboard, so maybe they would be an agency that'd be interested in doing a collection for compost. And they could work with the TPP workability program, training up our youth to then be the get paid for these things through the programs that already exist. We thought we could offer incentives to households, like a voucher at the farmer's market or something along those lines for households or residents or businesses to participate in this program. And then the media we could use is everything, flyers, YouTube videos, Facebook, all the ways that we would educate and things like that. Trainings could happen in places where people are trapped, like schools, or they could happen at the food board. We want to, have like an audience that can't run away from us. The food forest or the open door garden would also be sites that potentially could be drop-off locations. And then funding sources could be things like Cal Recycle grants or foundations or a fee that is charged to residents or businesses to pick up. And then the metrics of success would be how much compost was generated, how much we were able to make this byproduct of compost, and then how many organics were removed from the waste stream. And then a cool little side idea that we had was another layer of like helping out all of this waste reduction is the garbage reduction too. Those compostable trays that we're using at the schools, maybe just getting rid of those and having reusable trays, but they don't have the infrastructure at the schools to be able to wash and sanitize. So that could be a business opportunity for someone, kind of like the old laundry service, having a business that offered that washing and sanitizing to schools so that we could, or maybe even the prison could be someone that did that for the schools. We don't know, but Julie's have great brains and they came up with that idea. And I think that's us. We did it.
Thanks. That was fabulous.
So we chose the same line and had a little different focus with the schools. And I'm going to hand it over to Javier because he's working with the high school and he has more to say.
So we were thinking about, we did drop off to community composting outreach, but I also think it goes hand in hand with the business opportunities for waste streams. And basically we're thinking some of the details, I guess, doing the outreach would be like the school gardens that already focus on working with the high schools, and myself, the agriculture program coordinator. I work with the FFA and the CTE programs. And the likelihood of participation, we think it'll vary on the demographics, but I think including the FFA and the CTE programs, we'd actually get a lot of people who would want to participate because they have to create their own entrepreneurship and they have to follow it through the school year. And it'd be the kind of thing where we feel like they could potentially make a business out of it and continue to build it. And then we believe that the sources for media for outreach would be like the radio, social media, flyers, and training locations would be, schools, the food garden, places like that, the FFA club, and they have a farm there. So it'd be like a perfect place for training locations and get the kids involved in it. And let's see, supporting organizations I already mentioned, like the community gardens, all the school gardens. potential funding sources, potentially Recology or the CFC. And the metrics of success would be creating a sustainable business, the number of food that's collected and composted, and potentially customers for a business that we create from that. Yeah.
All right, we got one more group. Ted, are you presenting?
So we also discussed food waste reduction. Loved your ideas about reaching out to restaurants. We didn't actually approach that, so we took more of an approach to reach businesses and schools and residents. And we looked at outreach through schools, perhaps through the Seeds and Starts programs, possibly partners through the FRC or the Denali Food Council. Details would include perhaps outreach related to the CalFresh program and modifications of that, perhaps through demonstration kitchens and target agencies. The likelihood of participation or changing behavior. We discussed the importance of culturally grounded outreach and the potential for talking about food preservation and waste reduction in the context of, say, things like smoking meats and traditional food preservation techniques. Wide spectrum of potential interested parties, and so it's important to consider all the different folks that you might be trying to reach. Media, all of them, flyers, digital, Facebook, radio. Training locations could be any demonstration kitchen, such as the FRC, perhaps social services, the farmers market, perhaps health fairs. Lead organizations could include the tribes, the school district, the Denali Food Council, FRC, supporting organizations, perhaps the Solid Waste Authority, Department of Social Services, the tribes, or First Five. Funding sources, ongoing funding sources was a challenge, though. There's plenty of potential grants in the short run. CalRecycle, CalFresh. CalFresh apparently is a federally funded program, so that's uncertain moving forward. The school district, tribes, and the Solid Waste Authority. Regarding metrics of success, we didn't really get a chance to talk about that. Some of the scribbled notes include a possible waste characterization or baseline surveys, because there isn't a lot of awareness in terms of how aware are people of food waste reduction options. And so kind of the basic metrics, if the person moves into the community, how do they find out about food waste reduction? Where would they begin? And have we penetrated the community enough so that enough people know so that they could ask somebody, they'd say, oh, well, you just do this. Have we gotten to that point? All right, that's it. Thank you. Anything to add, group?
That was great. I love that last comment too about where do we go? Are we even at that place yet where people know how to reduce their waste? So we are behind, and I don't want to skip over our municipal capacity for composting, but I am going to go through it pretty quickly to save time. I think that when we're talking about the municipal capacity, it's important to remember that it's not only going to be county and agency run, but that there really is a need for community partnerships, for interagency cooperation and collaboration to really secure success for these programs. As just we were brainstorming and talking about all the different things that need to happen, we really need to be working together. So I wanted to go into what a few other rural communities are doing that are similar to Del Norte in some ways. We put together this chart of municipal composting systems and kind of what their feasibility are. I think the key things to look at here are the equipment costs, the operations on a monthly basis, and what really is feasible for our small community. Community mulching, static piles. Windrow is a little bit more of a pricey setup, but lots of benefits in terms of compost and our end product. In-vessel, and then anaerobic as well. So we will look through these a little bit closer, looking at Ptolemy County, Amador County, and then some other systems like Big Belly. And there's another one that actually mulches and bags that I'll share with you as well. And then for these processes, it's important to remember that some are going to be producing compost and an end product, while others are just dehydrating, and you'll still need somewhere to compost it. So making sure that we have a place to take our compost. One of the pieces that Craig brought up in our small discussion was all of the brush management that's currently being shipped out of our community, and we have a ton of brush in our very wooded community. So on that note, I am going to just skip ahead to Amador County, and they have created a community compost at a local ranch. It was funded through Cal Recycle in collaboration with Motherlode Land Trust, the county, as well as Master Gardeners. And they were able to establish a community compost at this ranch, encouraging community and residents to bring their food scraps for composting. And they're diverting waste from the landfill where it would otherwise go into reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions. So they put together this great little like trifold educational what can be composted, what can't be composted. It seems like they're having some good success. The other community that I wanted to just highlight a little bit, and I apologize, I know I am going quickly through this, was Ptolemy County, and they were able to purchase some equipment, a chipper and dump trailer, and they threw 5 different community events where they were able to take all of their, the word is lacking, their vegetation and wildfire debris or wildfire stuff that could become wildfire debris. They were able to have these events and chip all of the materials right there at the event. And I think there was some lessons learned. One was that they had smaller participation than anticipated. I think we always think everybody's going to love this. And then also making sure that there is a destination for all of the green waste. So it was amazing. They were able to chip and bag and mulch, but making sure, especially here in Del Norte, that there is an end use for that green waste at the end of everything. And again, there was several partners. The Public Works, the Sheriff, and Firewise was also able to participate to make this happen. They distributed bags for community members and put out signs 1 to 2 weeks before the event. And they did separate piles for like woody waste and brush, and were able to come together for these events. And it sounds like they had pretty good success in diverting some of this waste. And then there's things like Big Belly, and Big Belly is literally like a trash can that people can throw their compost into. Again, this is an amazing, it makes it very easy for people, but there's a lot of back end management that needs to make sure that these systems are serviced, that they're picked up. And then again, you need somewhere to take all of this compost. So we would need to have somewhere to take it if this was an option that we wanted to move forward with. In terms of getting people to participate, it's pretty easy to get when there's an easy bin and the pictures on the side of it. And then this was one of my favorites, this roto chopper that actually grinds and bags all in one. It's a mobile unit. When we're thinking about Del Norte County, we do have so much debris that could be managed differently and given back to the community as a resource that could be used for landscaping, composting, animal bedding, building topsoil, decorative in our parks. So these were just some of the municipal, and as you can see with a lot of these, it is a municipal effort, but there is a need for community engagement and participation of multiple stakeholders. And this one, the Earth Flow Intermodal, was another one that we brought up in our last meeting. And Similarly, it's a container where drop off, it's a fully contained system that controls odor and things like that, that could potentially be a possibility for our community. So again, we have some discussion questions prepared. What scale and type of infrastructure are you thinking that we need here in Del Norte? And what would make a system convenient and consistent for our community? And then again, who needs to be at the table? What stakeholders need to be involved? So I'm going to open it up.
If I might ask a question, Aya.
Yes.
In the Tuolumne example where there was the ranch, I'm sorry, it was Amador. Amador, where there was a ranch accepting food waste from the community. Can you tell me a little bit more how that material was received and contaminant control, anything like that?
Yeah, if Mary is still online, I would love to pass it over to her because she is the one that passed this on to me.
Yes, I'm still here. What they're doing right now is taking reservations. It's at the ranch that it's on. It's owned by the Motherlode Land Trust, and they have a community garden there now. So they have expanded it to incorporate a community composting. The top left-hand picture just shows how where the composting is up a road where it has loops around and they drop it off there. It just opened last month. And like I said, right now they are just doing it by reservation only because they have their office right next door. So there's always somebody available if somebody wants to come in and drop it off. It's just started initiating recently. So and they expect it to, with more and more education and outreach to be used more. They will be holding events at different times to see how that goes, but a lot of it is, it's a trial right now, and that's why they're doing it by reservation only.
Okay, thank you.
Ted, just to add to that, the full cycle compost in Humboldt, and then there's also another small business that is doing vermicomposting and worms, and they do sell the worms. Both of those entrepreneurs are charging by the bucket, and so people sign up and they have their bucket picked up. So the worm guy like drives and picks up, and the bicycle people drive and pick up. And they have certain like days where they'll come and pick up the bucket. And the homeowners or businesses pay a nominal fee. And I think there's different sizes.
Anyone else on maybe what role different stakeholders should play, or are there logical drop-off locations that you can think of in our community? Are we there yet to start talking about it? I think it might be important to bring that to the conversation now. I also realize we have 10 minutes left, so we can come back to this at our next meeting if needed. Because I do want to mention and have this vision of a 10-year goal for organic waste and what success would really look like in 10 years, building on, the value and vision of Del Norte and the work of this group, all of us coming together, how much, I think SB 1383 requires a 75% reduction by 2035 of organic waste. How much of that do we want to be food? Some of these other measurements of like number of households composting or participating in food recovery systems, those baseline numbers we do not have. And it's hard to know how many people are composting in their backyards. And measuring that for success might be a little bit tricky as well. And then, how many tons of organic waste are we processing annually, and hopefully we'll see a reduction in what is leaving our county and what is being utilized here. You want to add anything, Drea?
Yeah, I guess it's a question for Ted and Kira and the task force is, are there thoughts or plans to capture some of this baseline data? Because if we are creating kind of goals and metrics, how will we know if we're making a move? So would our first step potentially be finding a way to start collecting some of this baseline data?
Potentially. Once we get it, certainly we need the baseline data in order to measure our success. And I think once we establish a better idea about where we're headed, it'll be a little bit more clear what baseline data we might need to gather and how we might approach that. I acknowledge we don't have a lot of information outside of the tonnage information and customer information we have through the Del Norte County Transfer Station, but there's plenty of opportunity to grow there.
I think it would be really hard to quantify without doing a series of waste characterizations. We do know that we are diverting tons away from the landfill just in the fact that we are doing a lot of food rescue, and that's one of the ways we've been able to quantify it.
I think this may be a blue sky idea, ideal situation, but it's something where it's a holistic property that's designed holistically with somebody who lives on it with dogs and a fenced-in area and chickens, and basically can accept huge amounts of food waste and woody debris and wood chips. And there's a great video on based on a guy named Carl Hammer, Carl with a K, in New Hampshire, who's doing it on a fairly large. It would be a large scale for us, like 600 chickens managing. We could one site like that could manage a great deal of compost, or make a lot of compost, produce a lot of eggs, potentially maybe provide those to the school or other people in need as well. No reason you couldn't incorporate other livestock as well.
You have any interest in doing that?
I guess I could throw.
That's what I was thinking.
He looks like Dar.
I'll throw in that with the chicken farm that this would be an entrepreneur opportunity, is that pigs eat just about anything. I mean, they're very food oriented. It's true what you hear, and that would be a great way to make full circle of a lot of the food compost and green waste.
So some more thoughts from folks that are here about, as we're going through these meetings and writing a 10-year vision, like what are we actually trying to accomplish? Like what would be good goals for us to set, like for a number of households using on-site organic management systems, for a number of businesses using food waste management. It might be hard to think about how many tons of compost we want to process locally, but how many education programs do we want to have in place? We need to kind of set some North Stars and goals that we are working towards.
Reducing the use of biocides and other contaminants for compost materials would be important in order to have a high value end product. Reduce the quality of the compost and then have other effects.
I would love to see that we reach a tipping point in our community of people who have basic working knowledge about food systems, organic systems, and the need for compost. So that's going to be a lot of education.
I'd like to see at least 3/4 of the yard debris tons delivered to the Del Norte County Transfer Station get processed and distributed in Del Norte.
I meant locally. 2 thumbs up.
Yep.
Is there any way we could start a pilot program for families that kind of want to be, at the front of the line for this program? We'll just put the feelers out there. Be like, hey, composting program, sign up. Starting, with 50 families or 100 families, and just try see what their participation is and see what hiccups we get along the way. So that way it's not, like 1,000 residents. Let's start small, figure out our kinks, and then try to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
I think that's a fabulous idea. And I think that with a smaller pilot group, we could develop some very engaging outreach programs as well for things that are coming up, barriers that come up. Anyone else? While I'm up.
Translate funds that would like for the from the benefit of the to those people who are contributing the composting materials, and then benefit to the community from reducing all the goals that are behind this, to then help incentivize somebody to dedicate a half acre or whatever amount of space of their land. Many people with landholders here are not making very much per acre off of their land, and it could be honestly, wouldn't be an ideal place for the Lily Bowl farms. What they need is a huge composting facility to start. That would be one way to start mitigating the damage to that land. So, but I think hubs and like if every 6 blocks had a hub spot, ideally that you don't have to transport all this material because it's heavy. It's generally heavy, and becomes both a cost as well as a carbon and pollution producer. So reducing the transport distance is also a big benefit of such a.
Great. We have just about a minute left, and wanted to make sure we end on time. And thank you all for being here. We will have another meeting. We haven't finalized our meeting schedule, but as soon as we do, we will get that out to you, and hopefully it will be sooner than later. I believe we're trying to plan one for the end of August and October for our next 2 meetings. And with that, I think I'll pass it over to Craig to do a formal adjournment.
Well, thank you, Aya, Andrea, and everybody in attendance. It seems like we're starting to recycle ideas and things, and that's a good thing because we're narrowing it down and refining what we're after, setting what our long-term goals are. All of these ideas, of course, are interrelated to the common theme of making our community more resilient, producing less methane gas, and not hauling so much stuff to the landfill. And food rescue, it's all tied together. So in the future meetings, I expect we'll be doing more feasibility work. What is actually going to work in our county? Lots of good ideas. What's going to work? I love the idea of pilot programs because that's how we have to start small and scale up. Just great appreciation for your attendance, and thanks for the progress that we've made, and we'll let you know when we're having our next meeting. With that, I call this Solid Waste Task Force meeting adjourned.
Before you leave, if you could use your phone and shoot that QR code and fill out a quick evaluation, that'd be helpful for our next meeting planning. Thank you all for coming.
And if you didn't sign up, there's a sign up front as well.
And if you have any follow-up ideas or are thinking about this late at night, as we all do, Feel free to email us at the Solid Waste Authority or IR Drea, and we'll make sure that those ideas get to be part of this meeting. Thank you.